I guess the best part of my childhood that I remember was on the Lower East Side. I was a little girl, a very little girl. My grandparents lived in a tenement. Grandparents were not from the Lower East Side. They came, I don't remember when they came. In the 1900s, obviously. Before World War II, that I know. They were from a small town called Barnów in Poland. And the stories I heard, of course, they are all stories. They were very, very unhappy. My grandfather had a little grocery store, and living was, they never had much to eat, and the main object of the entire thing was the persecution. I mean, my grandmother would say, and my mother told me that, the Polish people thought that the Jewish people used the blood of their children for matzahs on Pesach. And there were pogroms, and on Yom Kippur they would take pointed objects and go into windows, and my grandmother would have to take the children away from the windows. It was just awful. My mother said coming home from school they were beaten up, because I would imagine that they had payas, or what do you call them in English? Do they call them forelocks? I don't know what they call them in English. And my uncles. And it was a terrible, terrible time. So my grandfather came first. He came to this country first, and then he sent for the kids. I hear this story too, and it's very interesting. My grandfather was a very little man, and he had a long white beard, as I said prior, and always wore a yarmulke or a hat, and he was very good in math. He did not go into the grocery business here. He became a printer, and he had accounts in the garment center. Now, he came in steerage. My grandmother was sick as a dog, I heard. They were, on the bottom of the boat, but they did come here. They came to Ellis Island, and I took my daughter to Ellis Island, and it was really, it was the first time that I had been there, and I marveled at it, and I was very impressed, and I bought I don't know what I bought. I put their name on the wall, the Israel Joseph Sussman family. I did that because I thought it was I just wanted to. It was really a great experience. And they came, I guess, to this, could have been this really first apartment, or maybe it wasn't. I really don't know what the first apartment was, but the one was on Lewis Street is the one I remember. It is no longer there. They put up condominiums. They tore it down, but while in Poland, my grandmother, who did lots of stuff, she had this little mushroom, and this mushroom was used to darn socks. She used to darn socks that were totally unbelievable. She made I don't even know how you would call it. It was almost like a patch, a woven patch with thread. She would go one way and then in and out, and the sock would fit over this, and that's how the socks were darned. In here you have space for needle and thread. She went to a place called Trishkovich, and it's marked. She must have gone there for some reason, I don't know, and brought this back. And this, I can't imagine how old this is. I remember it as a child, and when she passed away, I took it out of her apartment. It was just something very, very special. I have a picture of my grandparents that were taken in my mother's. And as you can see, Orthodox men are not supposed to touch women, so you could see my grandfather sitting very staid with his hands in his lap, and my grandmother with her with her wig. This is my mother's house in Forest Hills in around the 1950s, early 50s. I also remember growing up, aside from the Iceman that would come up to my grandmother. I never called her grandmother, though. I called her Bubba, which is grandmother in Yiddish. When she wasn't feeling well, I don't really know the English word for this. These are called bankis. They sort of, a barber would come up and do this, and you would lie on your chest, and he would work on your back, and he would heat up the bottom of this, and then it would kind of suction to your skin. They would leave it on, and when they took it off, you'd have a big black and blue, like the blood would come. I guess it was a European method for healing before chiropractic, probably. And the mark would go away. It didn't hurt. I would just marvel at these purple and red polka dots all over her back. But that's what it looked like. That's exactly what it looked like. And I also took some of these when she passed away because I figured nobody would have them. And something else that my grandmother did that was wonderful. I learned Yiddish from her. Her English was very poor, and she tried very hard. I would speak English to her, and she would speak Yiddish to me. So in that way, she learned English, as she called it, and I learned Yiddish. We went to the Yiddish theater, which I loved, and to this day, even in my nursery school, I teach my kids a little Yiddish. We have a dress-up closet, and Miss Esther calls it a shmata closet. And a shmata means a rag. It's like old clothes, and the children will know when I say, put the pocketbooks in the shmata closet, they will do that. And I use a lot of Yiddish words with the kids because I think it's a wonderful language, and my grandmother was very, 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 very special to me. Not as when I grew up and got married, of course, she was at my wedding. My grandfather had passed away, but I just spoke to her a couple of times a week. And when she died at 96, I really was hysterical because I know she was old. I know she lived a good life. But she's just a very special person. And I will never, ever forget her. And that grandfather clock my grandmother bought for us when we bought our house because she wanted to buy us a gift. And I thought, and I said, you know what, Bub? If I get a table, it'll break and I'll throw it out. I have to think of something that will last. And all of a sudden it hit me. And that clock, which Andrea will take a picture of later, is the house gift that my grandmother bought my husband and myself when we got married. And it still works. And you know what I call it? I call it my Bubba clock because that's what it is. And I hope my kids will take it someday because it means really, really a lot to me. And on that note, I will end this interview.